Have you noticed yourself feeling more reactive lately? Maybe you're snapping more quickly, feeling overwhelmed more easily, losing patience over things that normally wouldn't bother you. And maybe you've been telling yourself it's because your kids are home more, because they're fighting, their routines are different. But what if the reason you're feeling overwhelmed isn't actually starting with your child? What if it's starting with the thoughts that you're thinking about your child, your summer, and yourself? Today, we're kicking off a brand new series on the foundation of emotional regulation, and we're starting with something that most moms never realize is shaping their entire day: their thoughts. Mama, are you tired of meltdowns stealing the peace in your home? Welcome to Parenting Beyond Meltdowns. I'm Amanda, a Christian life coach and a mom of a strong-willed neurospicy teen. If you've tried everything from consequences, parenting books, crying out to the Father, and still feel like you're failing, you're not alone. Inside this podcast, we'll explore how faith, emotional regulation, and connection work together so that you can parent from a place of peace, even in the hardest moments. You don't have to hold it all together here. This is a safe space to lay it all down. Welcome. Before we jump into today's episode, I want to invite you to join my insiders list. Every week, I send faith-filled encouragement, emotional regulation reminders, behind-the-scene reflections, and practical tools to help you stay anchored when parenting feels hard. If you've ever listened to an episode and thought, I needed that reminder today, then I think you'll love being a part of my insider community. You can join today through the link in the show notes. There was a season when I woke up already exhausted. Not because anything had happened yet, not because someone was melting down, not that we had had a hard morning. I was just exhausted before my feet even hit the floor. And what I eventually realized was that I wasn't exhausted because of my circumstances. I was exhausted because of my thoughts about my circumstances. The moment I woke up, my brain was already offering me things like, this is going to be a battle. I can't do this again today. Something is going to go wrong. Why is parenting my child so hard? I'm failing. And the more I thought those thoughts, the more evidence I found that they were true. Every meltdown felt bigger. Every argument felt heavier. Every difficult moment felt like proof that something was wrong with me or my child. And if I'm honest, I see this happening to so many mamas, especially during the summer, because summer often comes with its own set of thoughts. I can't do this all summer. We're only 2 weeks in. They never stop fighting. I should be enjoying this more. Everyone else seems to be having a great summer. And what most of us don't realize is that those thoughts don't simply pass through our minds. They create emotions. And those emotions shape how we show up. Maybe you've experienced this too. Your child leaves their shoes in the middle of the floor. Normally, it wouldn't be a big deal, but because you've already been carrying thoughts like, no one helps me, everything falls on me, I'm doing this all alone, you feel frustrated before you even open your mouth. And suddenly, a pair of shoes becomes a much bigger issue than it really was to begin with. Our thoughts are powerful, and whether we realize it or not, they are influencing how we feel every single day. Today, I want to give you 3 anchors for your thought life. Because if we're going to change how we show up, we need to start with what's happening inside our minds. Anchor number 1, become aware of your thoughts. Most of us spend our days believing that every thought that our brain offers us is truth. We never stop to examine them. We never question them. We simply assume that they are true. Did you know that researchers estimate that we think between 30 and 40,000 thoughts every day? And most of those thoughts happen automatically. That's why you can wake up already feeling overwhelmed before anything difficult has even happened. The circumstance itself is often neutral, like your child has a meltdown. That's a circumstance. Your child refusing to do chores is a circumstance. Your child arguing with a sibling is a circumstance. What creates our emotional experience is often what we are thinking about those circumstances. For example, the circumstance, your child refuses to clean their room. Your thought is, they never listen. You start feeling frustrated, and the actions you take from that is that you raise your voice. And what's your result? More conflict. But what if that thought was, my child is struggling right now? You may still address the behavior, but you'll likely show up differently. In Proverbs 23:7, it says, a man thinks in his heart, and so is he. Our thoughts become our beliefs. Our beliefs influence our emotions, and our emotions fuel our actions. The first step is simply becoming aware. Anchor number 2, ask yourself, does this thought serve me? One of the biggest shifts I ever made was learning to stop asking, is this thought true? Because honestly, you'll almost always find evidence that it is. Instead, I started asking myself, does this thought serve me? Take the thought, parenting my child is hard. I'm sure you could find evidence for that. Of course. But does thinking that thought help you become the mama that you want to be? Does it create peace? Does it create connection? Does it help you respond from a grounded place? Maybe not. Now, that doesn't mean that you jump all the way to the other end of the spectrum saying that parenting is easy, unless you're me. Because I'm a type A, let's just go all in and do it. And so that is actually what I did. That thought I just gave you is the thought that I was thinking. I was thinking that parenting my child was so hard. And that created a really painful story in my life. And in that season, that worked for me personally. Sometimes the better approach is finding a thought that's both believable for you in the moment or that season. So it might sound something like, I'm learning new ways to respond. The Father is equipping me for this season. I don't have to get it perfect to make progress. My child's behavior doesn't define my worth. I can choose connection even when this feels hard. Those thoughts create a completely different emotional experience. Anchor number 3, declutter your mind. One of the most practical tools that I teach my clients is something called a thought download. Some people may call it a brain dump. Because most of us are carrying around hundreds of thoughts that we never stop to examine. They're just swirling around in our heads all day long, and then they stay trapped there, and they often feel true. But something powerful happens when you put them on paper. You begin to see them for what they are. Thoughts are thoughts. They're not facts. They're not identities. They're not prophecies. They're just thoughts. When you're feeling overwhelmed this summer, I want you to grab a journal. Or even better yet, you can make this a daily practice or rhythm by doing this every morning before you start your day. I want you to set a timer for 3 minutes and write down everything you're thinking. No filtering, no editing, just write. And then look at what came out. It could be a to-do list. It could be you being upset or frustrated with something that happened the day before or even that morning. Are you feeling hurt, frustrated? What is going on there? Just write it all down. And you might be surprised what you've been carrying. And I want you to look at this, and any specific thoughts you can underline. Just doing this, bringing awareness to what you're thinking, is going to give you so much information to work with. In 2 Corinthians 10:5, it tells us to take every thought captive in obedience to Christ. Sometimes that process begins simply by getting those thoughts out of our heads and onto paper. A bonus truth for you today. Other people's opinions are not your responsibility. Before we finish, I want to leave you with one more thought. Summer often means more family gatherings, more vacations, more church events, more opportunities for people to share their opinions. And if you're raising a strong-willed or neurodivergent child, you've probably heard most of them. You just need to be stricter. That wouldn't happen in my house. Why is your child acting like that? Mama, I want you to hear me. Other people's thoughts, feelings, and opinions about you and your child are not yours to carry. They are not your responsibility. They do not determine your worth or your child's worth. Your job is not to manage their thoughts and feelings. Your job is to stay anchored in what the Father says to you about the truth of who you and your child are. Our faith anchor today is Romans 12:2. It says, "Do not be conformed to the world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind." Transformation begins in the mind, one thought at a time, one belief at a time, one moment of awareness at a time. Today, we walk through the 3 anchors of becoming aware of your thoughts, asking yourself if those thoughts are serving you, and decluttering your mind with a daily thought download. If this summer you've been feeling more reactive, I don't want you to immediately assume that the problem is your child. Start getting curious about what you're thinking, because often the path to emotional regulation begins long before the meltdown ever happens. If you want to hear more about this topic, you can head over to episode 10. Our micro shift for the week, I want you to set a timer for 3 minutes and do a thought download, and then ask yourself, what thought am I believing right now that's making parenting harder than it needs to be? Or you could even say, what thought am I believing right now that's making my relationship with my child harder than it needs to be? Instead of looking for a perfect thought, look for a thought that feels more truthful, more helpful, more aligned with what the Father's heart for you is. Mama, if today's episode made you realize that you're spending most of your days feeling frustrated, snapping at your child more often than you want to, carrying guilt after the way you reacted, feeling like you're constantly on edge, or wondering why every little thing seems to set you off lately, I want you to know that there's a reason for that, and it may not be what you think. So often we assume that the problem is our child's behavior, but many times what's driving our reactions starts long before the meltdown ever happens. It starts with the thoughts that we carry all day long. Inside Anchored Mama Coaching, we slow everything down together. We look at the thoughts, the emotions, and the patterns that are keeping you stuck in survival mode, so you can stop reacting from overwhelm and start responding with more peace and confidence. Because the goal isn't about becoming a perfect mama. The goal is helping you feel steady again, helping you to stop ending each day wondering why you reacted the way you did, helping you to rebuild connection with your child without carrying guilt and pressure. And Mama, you don't have to figure this all out on your own. You can book an Anchored Mama session through the link in today's show notes or by heading over to amandakelvey.com/session. If you've been on the fence about booking a session or just have questions, I have a link in the show notes where you can ask me a question one of 3 ways. You can leave a video, an audio message, or a text message, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. And if you have had an idea that you want me to cover on the podcast, you can also go over and just leave a message directed towards that. Or if you've just had something on your heart that you want to share with me, I would love to hear from you. Hey, sweet mama, I hope you loved today's episode. Can you do me a favor? If this episode spoke to your heart, would you take 30 seconds and share it with a mama in your life who needs to know they are not alone? Also, would you leave a quick review on Apple Podcasts for me? It blesses my heart to know that this show is giving you hope in hard moments. All right, I'm off to grab some protein because love and grace flows easier when you're not just running on fumes and coffee. I'll meet you back here next week for another honest and hope-filled conversation. In the meantime, Mama, stay rooted in faith and anchored in love.